Hi, I'm Siobhan Ashby and I'm a Senior Financial Advisor at Northeast Wealth.
Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Hello and welcome back to the Australian Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Campbell, and I'm here today with the wonderful financial advisor from Northeast Wealth, Siobhan Ashby.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
Wonderful to have you back.
Yeah, really good to be back. I'm so excited.
Now, we're talking about something a little bit different from childcare and parental leave payments this time, but within the same ballpark, which is making career changes.
Yes, yeah.
And all the financial impacts and preparation that we could do to prepare for that.
Exactly, yeah.
Have you had any big career changes in your life?
I have had a career change in the sense that I took a career break. I actually did that last year. It was really cool. Went on a career break to Europe for 5 months. So definitely worthwhile doing, but had a massive impact on us, of course, not just because there was no work for that period of time, but also because we were spending a lot during that period of time. So that's sort of my most recent experience of that.
How long have you spent saving and planning and thinking about that trip?
Thinking about it for like my whole life. Really? Definitely a bucket list item for me to go and have an experience like that and travel for an extended period of time. But realistically, properly planning for it for a year beforehand.
Yeah, to make sure you had your finances in order.
Exactly. So, although the discussion started long before that, it was a year of very, structured saving, putting money into a completely separate bank account and really preparing for that time of our lives.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you took 6 months off at 18 to go travel around Europe, you wouldn't have had any costs back home to worry about. Not really. But I imagine doing it further on in your career, you would have still had all these bills coming out back home that you had to prepare for as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The mortgage still needs to be paid.
The health insurance.
Yes, yeah, all those fun adult costs that we have. Yeah, definitely still needed to be paid. I mean, to be honest, we did try and plan for it as best as possible in the sense that we planned our mobile phones to go down to prepaid so that we had no cost for mobile during that time. And we tried to, we actually rented our property out while we were away to receive some income from it. So, there was actually quite a lot of planning in the background, not just to save for the trip, but also to try and mitigate our ongoing expenses during that time as much as possible.
Do you think more people are taking career breaks? Are you seeing that in your client pool?
Absolutely. I think that we're fortunate to be in a really progressive time in society where it's not as common now to see people working for 50 years in one job. Now people do like to go and experience new things. I mean, since globalization happened, you can jump on a plane and be over the other side of the world at quite a reasonable cost in a short period of time. And people want to go and have those experiences. And so I think, employers are starting to cater to that more, and that's becoming a bit more normalized in society.
Yeah. Because there's lots of reasons why we might want to take time off work or have a career break that aren't necessarily to do with family planning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some people might want to try it because they're thinking of having a career change, for example. Maybe you want to see if you can start a business or kick something off by yourself, or maybe you just want to use that 12 months as an opportunity to go and do a completely different job, knowing that you've got sort of a bit of a opportunity to come back to your existing job if required. So there are a whole host of reasons why you might want to take time away.
I've heard from a few friends that work for quite large Australian or global firms that they can take things like sabbaticals and the employer will keep their role for 12 months. And sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, look, I think that sort of plays into what I was saying a moment ago in the sense of employers are becoming more progressive in that sense. Now, granted, that typically does require you to work for a larger company, as you were saying, and that's just the nature of larger companies versus small businesses. I mean, in small businesses, first of all, if you're not there, it's felt a lot more because there's less people to sort of fill up your space around you. But also, small businesses tend to work on a much tighter budget and cash flow. So if you're not there, that can really be felt, especially if you're someone whose job it is to produce income for the business. Whereas, if you work for a larger organization, there's a lot more available in that sense in terms of like leave entitlements and that flexibility, I would say.
Do you think there's anything you wish you did differently preparing to take a career break?
No, not particularly, to be honest, because I feel that we really planned for it.
You put that financial advisor skill set to use and applied it to your own life?
I did do that. But so, for example, I gave my employer 12 months notice. Now, I'm really grateful to work for a legend who created the conditions where I could actually come back to my job. But I think, in fairness, part of that was the fact that I gave him substantial warning. So it was also a case of, look, I really want to come back to this job, but I'm giving you enough time to give you the notice and give you the respect that this is what I want to do, and now you can adequately plan for that.
Yeah.
So that was part one. And my husband, he was in a contracting position at the time, and the way that we structured it was that his contract would finish when we were leaving, so he didn't have any sort of employment concerns to worry about at the time.
So if someone listening is thinking at the back of their mind, maybe I want to go on a sabbatical for 3 to 6 months in a few years' time, or I want to take 6 months off from work to see if I can get that small business idea off the ground, or I want to go back to uni, or I just want to try entering a new industry, how should we start preparing our finances? Because we can get excited by all these different ideas, but then when we come back to the reality of, oh, I'm going to need some income, I'm going to need some savings, how do we go about that?
It's really the answer I come back to, which is the budget planner. And I think particularly in this context, it's really worthwhile having a good understanding of your discretionary versus your non-discretionary expenses. So in particular, with your non-discretionary expenses, like your bills, they're the things that are going to come out regardless. You don't really have a lot of wiggle room, like your mortgage, kids' education, childcare, groceries, those sorts of things. You have to hit that regardless of what else is happening in your life. So you need to make sure that you have enough of a kitty there to support yourself to hit off those things. Now, if you can understand the difference between what you're spending on that versus what you're spending on your discretionary expenses, you might look at your budget and realize, oh, my discretionary expenses, so I like to refer to this as your pocket money or your fun money, I can actually afford to bring that down a lot. And so therefore, I can afford this reduction in my income or a cease in my income for a period of time. So being able to split those things and understand what's what will help you to determine, okay, this is the bare minimum, what I'm going to need each month to get by. So therefore you can start, building out a plan around how much do I either need to save for that, and how many months is that going to sustain me, or what sort of an income will I need if it's a career change and a reduction in income, for example, what do I need as a minimum reduction?
I remember Owen mentioned when he was starting Rask, he called it his ramen number of just like bare minimum of okay, I need $1,500 a month to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And I've just got to find any way to get that money, and the rest of the time I'm spending on starting the business.
Yep, exactly.
So if we know our non-discretionary expenses, our bare bones, is that something often people would save for? So they might save 6 months of those non-discretionary expenses so they can give themselves the room to take 6 months off?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the sort of thing where you just want to make sure that you have enough to sustain you for whatever the time period is. So this is also when you need to be considering what the goal is, what your plan is. So, in my case, it was just a complete break. So therefore, I did have a little bit of annual leave built up, but it was also, okay, I'm going to go months without an income. So what are my costs? And so therefore, I need to save a minimum for that. And then on top of that, I need to save for the trip. But if it's so
that's quite a lot of different things you need to save for your minimum cost back home plus the trip and all of that.
Hence taking 12 months to plan for it. But, the value in doing that was that we completely funded that trip from our savings. We also didn't touch the savings that we have that we want to put towards a family home. So, but, that doesn't happen overnight. That takes planning. And I think that that's probably where a lot of people fall short in society these days, is that we live in a instant gratification society. If you want something, you can just get it now and immediately. And so we've lost the art of patience. And I think what that's resulted in is people taking on personal loans and taking out debt that's not going to serve them well, because they don't have the patience to say, okay, well, I have this goal, but I just can't afford to do it right now. I'm just going to need to figure out what it's going to cost me and save for that.
I've seen banks advertising credit cards and personal loans with the push that you should go on that holiday right now. And you see all this encouragement that you should have it right now, you deserve it, you're entitled to it. And then that gets you into a pickle, because you come back after this trip overseas, which might have been fantastic, and you've got $15,000 of personal loan to pay back.
Yeah, exactly. And I've actually seen this happen with people before, where they say, oh, but it was just this opportunity that came up, or my boyfriend really wanted to do it, or my girlfriend really wanted to do it, and I just felt like I should. Sure, you can do that. It's available. But does that mean it's a good idea? Generally, no, it doesn't, because those sorts of, there are different types of debt, and some debt is actually good debt and can, has its purpose, and that's fine. But taking out, a personal loan, which typically has a high interest rate, and the rate of that repayment of that interest is much higher than you're going to get from, cash sitting in the bank. It can be very difficult to pay that off. And you've got to think about what's the value of it. If you're getting back from a holiday, for example, and then all you're feeling, afterwards is just stress and compounding stress from watching that loan sit there, I don't think that's worth it.
One of the things that sparks a lot of discussion on Reddit is this idea of whether you should quit your job without having something else lined up. Because a lot of people might just quit in a spur of emotion and they haven't got something else lined up, or they've quit because they want to go full-time in their business, but they haven't potentially put the financial backing behind them to do that. Have you seen this happen, and does it usually work out well or badly?
I've seen it happen. I think that it's very risky. Look, if you have taken the time to have saved some money, or if you know that you've got money sitting in the bank that's going to sustain you, not for a couple of weeks, but for months, like a really solid emergency kitty, or maybe you have the luxury of having a partner whose income might sustain you, you're starting to de-risk yourself a little bit. But if you're in a position where you've got not much in the bank, or you have a credit card debt or a personal loan debt or one of those sorts of things, and then you're just quitting, based on emotion, you're putting yourself in a really financially vulnerable position, and that's only going to create a more stressful environment, and might also lead you to take on a new job that you don't even necessarily want, but you just find yourself in a position of, oh God, I need money, so I'll just take what I can get. So I think, now of course, some people find themselves in really awful working environments, and that can't be discounted, but it's important to consider the implications of your decisions as well.
Yeah. So if we want to be kind to ourselves financially, and we're in a position that we can plan for this career change a little bit more, maybe we can plan 6 or 12 months out, we're doing some training on the side to build up our skill set, and we want to move to a different organisation or a different role, how can we be kind to ourselves and set ourselves up for success here, planning in advance?
Well, I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier, in the sense of understanding what your likely costs will be and then provisioning for that, and also setting some clear goals in terms of timeframes. So as an example, my husband has just started his own business, and so he's actually taken quite a substantial pay cut while we're having this business come off the ground. And we're okay with that because we've discussed it, we've planned for it, but we've also got targets around when does your income need to increase by how much does it need to increase, what does my income need to be doing in the meantime to help to sustain us and keep us moving along. So really that you need to be very mindful of the costs, and so therefore how much you need to have saved, but then also what's the expectation? Because let's imagine you're starting a new business. That's awesome. That's really cool. But some people can get very caught up in the emotion of, no, I just want this to succeed and I'll just wait till next month and I just wait till next month. And then suddenly they're 2 years on, they don't have a plan, the business isn't profitable, and they've exhausted all their savings and they're in a bit of a financial hole. So you need to go into it with some sort of set expectations or timeframes and be prepared to change the plan if it's not working.
So were these some of the things that help you get comfortable with the fact that you were going to be the primary breadwinner? I feel like we need a better word for that. But anyway,
yes, I'm winning a lot of bread.
Yeah, the primary income earner for a while. Like, how did you start feeling comfortable about doing that?
Just by having some really good conversations together, just setting expectations together around, what his income was going to drop to, what that was going to have, like what sort of impact that was going to have to our household cash flow. Can we still afford to save money? Okay, because that's important to me as a financial advisor. I don't want to be going backwards. Can we still afford to save? Great, we can. So that's a tick. But we're saving at a much lower rate, which is, not great for all the various other things we want to do in the future, like having a family, for example. So how long is that going to sustain us? And so coming to an agreement on, okay, well, we're going to give you the runway to get this going. We've got some savings sitting behind us. So if for whatever reason it's not going well, we're not going to go into a hole. But also me thinking about my income during this time, and we both understand that I need to do everything I can to increase my income. So what does that look like from a work perspective for me? So, having those conversations around how we can manage that together as a team so that we can still be moving forward as best as possible.
Because it's almost you're having to reprioritize your financial goals for a short period of time, because maybe the house deposit was the most important goal, but then one person really wants to try starting a business. And so the house deposit saving plan might have to be reduced for a while and fall down to number 2 priority for 1 or 2 years, which could be quite challenging for one of the people in the relationship.
Exactly. And I mean, look, to be perfectly honest, this has actually impacted our family planning, because we're at a period of our lives in our relationship where we would be ready for a family. And suddenly that's on the back burner because he's wanting to start a business. And now that's a mutually agreed upon decision. So we're both comfortable with that decision. But something like starting a family is also very important to a lot of people, ourselves included. And that is an emotional decision, and having to, be mindful of the impacts of that and how, one decision in terms of dropping an income or whatever it might be is going to impact the other things in your life that are very important. It's a juggle. And you do have to think about, that's why it's setting those expectations. Okay, you're going to go into this, you're going to start that. That's cool. I've got your back. You can go do that. But what's the time frame? Like, let's be clear on what the goal is here, because we have these other things that we're trying to achieve as well, and we want to make sure that we can hit those.
And even if it's not starting a business, if it's just retraining and wanting to enter a different industry and transitioning from marketing to law or something like that, you might experience an income drop for a few years while you build up your skills again in that industry.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have some members who are going through this at the moment, and they've done it beautifully because they're just such a team, and it's just so nice to see. So she's on like a very, very decent income, and so was he. And he's decided that he wants to go back to uni to study something completely different. And his income is dropping from $150,000 to $20,000 a year, like substantial hits.
Yeah,
they've got two young children. They have a mortgage. So this is stuff that is really impactful at a time in your life where expenses are actually increasing. And so, first of all, they were very clear on what that's likely to look like. They had an agreement in place where he needs to get a part-time job that's earning X amount so that they can still hit what they need to. And also just being kind to one another and understanding that she is going to have to step up for a while, and, she can't take an income cut. She can't make a career change, and both being very much on the same page and having the understanding that that's what's happening in their lives for the next few years. And, he's doing some really kind stuff to her. Like they've got their lifestyle allocation from their, their pocket money allocation from their budget, and he's giving a little bit more to her each month just to say thank you, and she doesn't expect that of him, but he's just doing that because he just wants to, show a bit of gratitude for, how she's providing for their family at the moment. So I think the discussions, the expectations, the teamwork can be super, super helpful in that situation. And, if you're not a member of a couple and you're just thinking of doing it by yourself, that's also cool. But critically, still just the planning and understanding what the goalposts are.
And I think that's what it comes back to in so many financial things that we want to achieve. It's giving yourself as much runway as possible and time to plan and save and put your finances in orders to make it easier for yourself to do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
What about other things we should be considering that might not be financial exactly? They might not be income related that we should consider if we're making a career move?
Okay, so I think that one thing that can really get overlooked is if you are in a position where you're nearing the entitlement for long service leave. Because essentially, I've actually seen this happen quite a few times. Long service leave, people are typically entitled to from 7 years of employment, and it's 3 months worth of income. That can be quite substantial. And so I've seen people from sort of between years 6 and 7 quit because they've had enough. But then when they go to get another job, they might say, oh, yeah, but I'm on the same income. But you've actually made a loss of a quarter of a year's worth of income because you didn't have that long service leave. Now, people are entitled to quit and to change their jobs, but I think that it's important to consider if you're in a scenario where you're approaching that long service leave entitlement, maybe it's better to wait it out so that you can at least get it. Or if it's not better to wait it out for whatever reason, then try and negotiate that into your new salary so that, you're not taking that big loss.
That's definitely something to consider, because even people that want to start their own business and things like that, there's all those things that suddenly they don't have access to that they might have had access to with a full-time job, like annual holidays.
Yes.
What am I saying? Public holidays. There we go. And public holidays and annual leave and sick leave and all those things you get with a job that everyone gets used to. And then suddenly if you take time off work to study or start a business, you don't have access to all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this really highlights the value of having, where possible, a financial safety net. And what I mean by that is having an amount that's sitting in the bank or in your offset account, wherever it's going to work the hardest for you, but like cash available to cover a few months worth of your expenses. And so the reason, for us, we generally do around 3 months worth of expenses. And so usually the expectation is, let's imagine that you're made redundant or you have to quit your job for whatever reason, you're not in a good work environment. The expectation is that within about 3 months, you could probably get another job, so your income could start to pick up again. But 3 months is normally enough time that you could sustain yourself for a while and get by. And also, in the event that you do become sick or one of those sorts of things, that's generally enough time to get by. And then, if you're in a situation where you're unwell beyond that, hopefully you might have some personal insurances in place to sustain you beyond that kind of period of time.
Because that was something else I wanted to talk to you about, of unplanned career changes or job losses, such as redundancies. How can we make sure that we're financially prepared for something like that, where we don't expect a career change, but it just is sometimes forced on us? Yeah,
well, I think that, again, having that financial security in place is a good thing, but also redundancies can be a hugely beneficial thing. Now, I don't say that lightly, because I appreciate that being made redundant can be a really stressful time, and, you're not always fortunate to get a big payout from a redundancy. But one thing that's also important to consider is that, let's imagine this actually happened to me. I was in a job that I really did not like, and I just had enough, and I was going to quit it anyway. And then I was off, my colleagues and I were offered a redundancy, And so I was now in a position where I was getting paid to quit.
Nice when things work out.
And it was just so good. And it was a lot of money to consider. And, with a redundancy, if you've had a long tenure, particularly in that organization, we're talking about, tens of thousands of dollars, perhaps into the six figures. And some of this, that can make a tremendous impact in your life, whether it be paying down your mortgage, saving for something, giving you a bit of runway so that you can start a new career. Those can be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity at times. And especially if you get paid, in that larger amount, that actually does give you the runway to take some time away from work and find a new job. So I think that, of course, it really depends on the context, of course, but so long as you've got that financial safety net where possible, I think that, redundancies can actually be a huge opportunity in a positive way.
And what if someone didn't have a financial safety net when something like this happened?
Well, I mean, then, naturally that's not as a good position to be in. There are some government services available. For example, Job Seeker is one where you can get paid for a period of time by the government, but you still need to be fulfilling certain things like showing that you're actively looking for work. So Job Seeker is generally paid in a case where you might not be entitled to a redundancy. Importantly as well, some organisations might not want to offer you a redundancy, but as an employee, you might still have rights to one. Unfortunately, not all employers are wonderful organisations. So if you find yourself in that situation, definitely look into it via Fair Work, because you might find that you're actually entitled to something that they're not trying to give you.
Awesome. So I think the number one thing from this conversation is that we need to be planned.
Yeah.
And think about all of these things we want to do in advance. So we can have a sabbatical, we can change careers, we can go back and study, we can start a business, but we just need to do as much planning financially, emotionally, mentally as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just be prepared to be patient. Not everything is going to come to us all at once. You can try and rush it by doing things like going into debt, but is the juice worth the squeeze? Probably not. So if you can, as you hit the nail on the head, plan, but just be patient that this can come to you. It might just take 6 months or 12 months or even a couple of years. And just know that, while I'm on the path and I'm still heading in the right direction, I just need to wait for a little while.
And there's a lot of ways you can experiment with a different career, studying something, starting a business on the side without quitting your job immediately. If we get creative, there's a lot of ways you can go, oh, is this what I'm interested in? Maybe I can do a 1-hour course on LinkedIn Learning or on YouTube or Coursera or something before I just start this whole master's course.
100%. And I think that that's a wonderful point, is that you don't need to give up everything that you're doing at the moment in full pursuit of that. Maybe you even cut down, let's imagine that you're working full time. Perhaps you can reduce to 4 days a week and spend that 1 day a week to try and give yourself the runway. I mean, the reality is businesses, like if you are in that position where you're wanting to start a career change or do something new, businesses can take a while to be profitable. So you do need to sustain yourself in the meantime. So perhaps it is worthwhile, rather than going all in straight away, taking the time and doing a bit of a split so that you can build up to it in the right time.
Wonderful. Well, we've created a great free budgeting course with your team at Northeast that's available on Rask Education. I'll link that in the show notes. That would be helpful for anyone planning ahead and wanting to work out what their costs are, what their discretionary and non-discretionary costs are, so they can work out what they can do, what they need to save up for. And if people want to get in touch with you, we'll have a link as well in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Yep. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.